All right. So after leaving Cambridge, McLuhan began his teaching career in 1936 at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, uh, the other school. Minnesota, and Wisconsin, we play every year. Our football teams, Abby, play for a giant axe, Paul Bunyan's axe.
Okay.
Do you care? You don't care.
No.
Nope, you don't care. Well,
But
the
you do,
Gophers have
so
the axe. I
continue.
do. I do. The
Okay.
Gophers have the axe, okay, right now, because we beat Wisconsin at the end of the
So
season.
we're defending
Very,
the axe.
yes, we're defending the axe. That's right. Paul Bunyan's axe. It's the greatest trophy in college football for sure. One of the yeah. We play Iowa for a pig.
Oh,
Yeah, Floyd of Rosedale. You, all these wonderful traditions in
what is the weirdest trophy in the
the
in
weirdest trophy
Mhm.
in college football.
Yeah,
I don't know. I Floyd of Rosedale's pretty weird. Yeah, yeah. It's a pig. It's a
it's a
statue of a
pig.
pig. Yeah, it's a pig. Yeah, yeah,
Is it like a gold pig or
yeah, yeah. You can
okay?
Google Floyd of Rosedale. Yeah,
I'm not gonna
Iowa.
do that.
Yeah. The Floyd of Rosedale Trophy is a bronze pig
It's a
awarded
bronze
to the
pig.
winning team of the annual University of Iowa and University of Minnesota football game. We will lose football games at the bank where we play, and on the way out, people will start chanting, "Who hates Iowa? We hate Iowa." It's college football in America. It's another level. It's another level. Anyway, the axe is actually a really cool tradition. I really like the axe. So it's important to beat Wisconsin. In any case, that's a little discursive, isn't it? So in 1936, he goes to Wisconsin and he teaches English literature and began to hone his skills as an educator. Um, I got to read about what this was like for him.
Hmm.
Uh,
The
let's
culture
see.
shock that was coming to Wisconsin.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So this chapter is called "A Professor in Spite of Himself." This is Miss W. Gordon. I am sorry that you cannot find work in Canada, but as nothing seems to be available for you here, we cannot object to you going to the States for a little. And then here's what he said to his mother: I am going to tear the hide right off Canada someday and rub salt in it.
Amazing.
He was, he's like, I am surrounded by provincial idiots. Like, that's where he was. All right. In the analytical terms McLuhan would later use, the U.S. favors figure to the exclusion of ground. Canada favors ground to the exclusion of figure. McLuhan, whose personality and patterns of thought made him a figure inseparable from ground, spent much of the 1960s and 70s shuttling between his native land and its southern neighbor. By then, he was the pioneer of media analysis, commanding attention and interest in both countries and on the world stage. But in 1936, his options were teaching English in Wisconsin, unemployment, or turning his life in a new direction. To be jobless after 8 years of university study was unthinkable, and the memory of hardships suffered by those around him during the worst of the Depression years in Winnipeg, hardships that the McLuhans themselves managed to escape, was still too vivid. Cambridge, on the other hand, had made him forget his brash vow at Manitoba to shun the academic life. That left the University of Wisconsin not as an option, but as a necessity. My life in Canada will be a continual discontent, he had written. My task as a teacher will be to shake others from their complacency. How is it possible to contemplate the products of English life, that is, literature, without criticizing our own sterility? Oh, God. Um, oh, his
But I
life in
mean, really,
Canada.
what do you do when you are that learned as
Right,
a
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a mess. What a disaster. It's definitely like you're gonna have to go teach somewhere. That's it. That's all you can do. It's hard to imagine. was no
Yeah.
crypto back then. He couldn't like.
That
There's no internet. I
there is
mean,
no internet.
what's he gonna do? Yeah. All
What
right.
is he
Well,
going to do? You have to
yeah.
teach more people all these wonderful things that you have learned for them to
I,
also go out and do what?
I'm gonna read a little more because this is really funny to me. He had
Okay.
arrived in Madison without recording the event 5 days before, writing in his diary, "Don't mind things here at all." He felt pleasantly cynical, an unaccustomed feeling for McLuhan, about what he did not say, and he bought a wristwatch and recorded the purchase, eschewing his long preferred spelling of bot in favor of bot. He would spell B-O-U, he would spell it B-O-T.
Right.
Um, on the first day of classes, he asked his students to write impromptu compositions. Sitting down to inspect the results the same evening, he commented, "It is heartbreaking to read some
Oh.
of them." The level of expression in the papers spread before him was not contemptible, but grim enough to jar him out of his comfortable cynicism of the previous day. The moment was not ripe for tackling literary appreciation through anything so daring as I.A. Richards' protocols or launching eagerly prepared salvos against North American sterility. Shaking his students out of complacency would have to wait while the young professor taught them fundamentals of language. It was McLuhan who was shaken. Yikes. Um, Though he had not yet received his first paycheck, he bought a briefcase and beefsteak, and he loved beefsteak. He loved steak, and armed himself for more grading with the finest red pencils money could buy. For his own edification and in the hope of finding the keys to teaching freshmen composition, he delved into H.L. Mencken's The American Language. After 2 days of the illumination provided by Mencken's engaging brand of scholarship, McLuhan could say he was feeling very American. He also said he despised Canada. For England, he felt a bit of nostalgia, especially as temperatures dropped to near freezing
Oh
in,
gosh.
in October, the same month when he had lunched with the Crawleys in their sunny Cambridge garden 2 years earlier. Okay. And then Marjorie is still on the scene here. A casual letter from Marjorie arrived, followed by silence, till she summoned the courage to write again a month later and broached the subject of their changed relationship. McLuhan answered the same day, expressing the hope that they could keep on writing to one another out of respect and affection. So that's been cooling off. So this is a real downer for him. This is like
Mm.
I'm I'm picking apart Finnegan's Wake. I'm on my way to getting a PhD from Cambridge. I'm hanging out with G.K. Chesterton, and now I'm at the University of Madison, Wisconsin, in Madison, Wisconsin. It's freezing in October, and these kids can't even they don't even know the language.
That is
Like
graduate blues times 1,000.
it's tough. And that is a very good school, by the way. Madison, I
Mm.
tease, but it's legitimately a good school, but it's not Cambridge. Okay. Okay. So there's a reason we hire people from those places to go teach.
Mm.
Okay. Um, but what's important is that we have the axe right now. That's what's important. All right. So he was at Madison for a minute, and then he took a position at St. Louis University, which I believe is a Catholic institution in St. Louis, where he would
Mhm.
teach for the better part of a decade, for like much more salary, like for like 4x. You know, he took like a real position,
Well, that's got
and
to
so
get
I
him a lot of beefsteaks.
he's eating a lot of beef. It's good. It's this media theory doesn't isn't powered by carbs. It's powered by protein.
Protein.
A protein, that's right. Uh, and if, ironically, it was a Jesuit institution, so it's a Catholic institution. So his mother's concern was not, you know, become a Catholic, get a job. Apparently, um, he deepened his study of medieval philosophy and rhetoric, and it was in St. Louis. It was around this time that he also met his future wife, Corrine Lewis. So she's going to come on the scene now.
Mm.
I'm going to introduce her. She's very important. Let
She's
me
not a
find.
student, is she?
No, 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 nothing like that, Abby. That's a different episode. Um,
Just looking for the darkness.
hmm No, I mean, there's he's not the darkest figure, but
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
no, 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 no. But that's the
Yeah.
show. But the fact that the fact that his entire work is reminding us that like technology is stripping us of our
Mm.
humanity
I mean,
is that's
we
plenty
are
dark.
suffering the darkness that
Yeah,
he
yeah,
put forth.
yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. He
Yeah.
described, right? Okay. Let's see. All right. Marshall McLuhan's diary, 25th of June, 1938. Bought wine at the oldest winery in California. All right, that's fun. So, June 1938, Elsie McLuhan had enrolled mom, love the mom,
Hmm.
had enrolled in a summer workshop at the Pasadena Playhouse School of Theater. Meanwhile, her son was making his way west across 6 states by car from St. Louis in the company of two friends. By happy coincidence, the material he had discovered he needed to begin research on the life and work of Thomas Nash was at the Huntington Library in San Marino, a short distance from Pasadena. LZ rented a small house, prepared for Marshall's arrival, and settled into a busy routine of daily classes and rehearsals. Aspiring stars had come from far and wide to the prestigious annual workshop, but Elsie could not help noticing one in particular, a tall young woman of arresting and dignified beauty, with a melodious voice made all the more compelling by her southern accent. She introduced herself as Corrine Lewis from Fort Worth, Texas. You ever been to Fort Worth?
Nope,
Cattle
nope, nope.
town. Great town.
Cattletown.
Cattle town. Yeah, that's where the trail would end. So it was old cattle money, and then Dallas was oil money. And Dallas,
Right.
Fort Worth, it's kind of one big metro, although they're like Fort Worth is its own little town. It's cute.
Hmm.
Did theater down there. Yeah. Elsie befriended her at once, charmed and intrigued by her grace and intensity. They had not been speaking very long when Elsie vet here. What do you think mom's going to do here?
She is quite the matchmaker.
I have a handsome son who is coming down next week. I want to introduce you. That's awesome. Just come out and say it, mom. A photograph taken
But
shortly
she
after.
knows exactly who he likes, though, because she's 2 for 2 at the moment.
Well, now that you mention it, and this one stuck. I mean, they ended up having
Yeah.
children and everything. Yeah. A photograph taken shortly after Marshall arrived shows him in an ill-fitting jacket bearing a startling resemblance to the young Ludwig Wittgenstein, known for his penetrating gaze. Future subject. I got to do old Viddy. LZ stands beside him, straight, slim, stylish, in a white suit with a bold scarf and a large hat at a rakish angle. Looking far younger than her 49 years, she scrutinizes the camera less intently than her son and wears a look of pride. Within a week of his arrival, Mrs. Fairfax Proudfit Walkup, the managing director of the Pasadena Playhouse, was opening the new library wing with a flourish. She swung the champagne bottle, but it refused to break. A second swing, and the bottle still remained intact. A third swing, and the glass shattered. To the cheers of the onlookers, theater people, they can't do anything. Can't do anything right.
Can't do a damn thing.
No. Now it was Kareen's turn to notice someone at the edge of the crowd. Tall, very thin, with a pencil mustache, decked out in beach pants and a Cambridge rowing jacket,
Of course.
trimmed in heavy black piping. He was leaning against the wall with a decidedly superior air, a pipe hanging from the corner of his mouth. Elsie led Marshall over and introduced him to Corrine, who thought he was the oddest looking fellow
Oh.
she had ever seen. Excuse me. A few minutes of conversation was enough to make her realize that he lacked the elaborate charm of the young Southern men who courted her in Fort Worth.
Mm.
What, she wondered, makes this man tick? It was the 10th of July. That night, Marshall noted in his diary, met Corrine Lewis. Worth knowing? Exclamation point. Uh, was she the unknown woman whose image he had been unable to shake from his mind upon awakening 4 days earlier? The next evening, they sat together at a performance of Shaw's Heartbreak House. 3 days later, it was Corrine to dinner. A week later came Marshall's 27th birthday, celebrated over a festive meal Elsie had prepared. She presented him with a handsome Gladstone bag that pleased him, and he was more than pleased with their only guest that evening, the vivacious Corrine. She is not quite irresistible, he told his diary, or else I am quite insensible. On the 5th of August, Corrine performed in Love on a Leash. As Marshall sat reading his program before the show, it may have been the first time he saw her name in print. And he finally learned how to spell her name, Corrine.
Oh gosh.
One R, two N's. Marshall had thrown himself into his research work at the Huntington Library in July. By early August, he was not seeing much but Corrine on the page. He's a hopeless romantic, this guy.
He is. He really gets consumed by these women.
Yeah.
The work starts to fall by the wayside.
I just think he's a natural Catholic. I mean, and they were fecund. They had numerous children. I believe I want to get the number right, but they had a big family.
Mhm.
Yeah. On the 10th of August, he took her to Santa Catalina, the island of romance. The day could not have been long enough for them. They swam, spent hours over dinner, climbed a mountain where they sat watching a full moon rise, talking till dawn broke and the soft mist lifted from the seascape below. Little more. Apart from her aspirations to a career on the stage, Corrine was teaching high school in Fort Worth, a teacher like
Mhm.
mom, and involved in the revision of the curriculum for the public schools. A voracious reader, she accepted the norms dictated by her social circle and kept her taste for literature from suitors who invariably were not her intellectual peers. With Marshall at
Mhm.
last, she could discuss all her literary interests. He was the sounding board she needed as much as she was the captive audience he needed. It was a relationship of a kind she might not have dared to hope for, and the kind he had always dreamed of. For Corrine, it made the lack of genteel ways in Marshall quite irrelevant. Okay,
I
so
think I know about five of these relationships.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, how so?
The women who finally found the men that read the same
Oh, sure,
books
and they
that
can
they have
hang
and
and
that
right,
yeah,
right,
they can
right, right.
hang
Yeah,
and the guy's like, "Oh, she knows things.
right.
She's an
We could
intellect."
actually have
Yeah.
a communicate, yeah, talk. Sometimes you
Yeah.
even end up friends.
So yeah.
You could even be friends. But yeah, so now they part. She goes back to Texas, and he was miserable, and so he's writing her letters, um, and they're writing back and forth. Corrine and her only sister Carolyn were not allowed to date young men or even to have female friends unless their family had known the other for 2 generations.
Wow. Two
It was
generations.
it was the old South.
Oh my
Corrine's
gosh.
father, Charles Lewis, was a real Southern gentleman with no head for business matters. He had always wanted sons, but unlike Herbert McLuhan, with whom he might have been a soulmate, he had been presented with 2 daughters whom he taught to ride, shoot, and fish. During the winter, he made an elaborate ritual of shining up every piece in his tackle box. In the evening, he would make a small ceremony of taking a cigar from his humidor and settling in for a good smoke, reading a book in his favorite chair with his boots propped on the end of the bed. Emma Corrine Lewis, curious about this is really important, really fun. So her mom, uh, to, whoops, yeah, curious about the letters addressed to her youngest daughter and namesake, asked to see the contents. She discovered after a few
Mm.
attempts at deciphering Marshall's cramped hand that he was writing about arcane literary matters and decided that the flow of correspondence could continue without inspection. That's hilarious. So they're writing about Finnegan's Wake and
Yeah, she's like, this looks
yeah,
like English.
yeah. This seems horny.
Yeah.
This is horny, right?
Uh,
You're learning something. That's really funny. Though the intellectual emphasis in Marshall's letters had saved the day, Corrine would come to wish, nevertheless, that the scales were tipped a little more toward the romantic.
mhm.
When Marshall was not writing to Corrine, he was thinking about her endlessly. In September, he told himself that he was not yet in love, but by November, he had too much Corrine on the brain and was practically proposing. There was no practically. As Corrine read it, Marshall assumed they were engaged. Okay,
Oh.
yeah. Now, I got to make sure that I get this right because the dynamic here was pretty fraught. Um, a young man to whom she had been all but engaged when she met Marshall was coming home. So she was already practically engaged to a guy. He
She's
was coming home. Go ahead.
betrothed,
Well, sort of.
sort
Yeah.
of.
He was coming home to Fort Worth for the Christmas holidays. Marshall felt that in announcing this, she was rubbing it in, but the announcement was intended only to discourage him from coming to Fort Worth and crowding her
Um,
Christmas with suitors. Marshall prepared to spend the holidays alone. By the 27th of December, however, he could stand it no longer and informed Corrine that he was on his way. I love this. Not only had the Lewises not known the McLuhans for two
oh gosh.
generations, but they were Episcopalian, and Marshall was a Catholic convert. He was a Yankee, too, and it would make
Mm.
little difference when he emphasized that his family were Southern sympathizers. No, really, I'm down. I'm down with General Lee. No, no, I'm down. Yeah. You guys got a raw
Oh.
deal. Yeah, that's gonna play real well. There's the South and then there's Texas too, by the way. There could be no question of his staying at the Lewis home. Kareen's grandmother conveniently suffered a nervous breakdown just before he
Oh.
arrived. So Marshall was obliged to go to a hotel where Kareen met him after his arrival on the morning of the 28th. I love this. People used to court. There used to be
Yes.
courtship. You're getting on that train. You're going
Yeah.
down there. You can't let that other guy get in. She
No,
might have a
it's
change
not.
of heart.
She's talking to someone else. Block her. No, you're
Nope.
getting on a
Yep.
train.
That's right. That's right. In spite of the circumstances and what might have proved insurmountable obstacles, the Lewises hosted a small party for Marshall the same evening. Mrs. Lewis placed a note in the local papers announcing that he and his mother were visiting Fort Worth. So that's the kind of people we're talking about here. Where a scholar from Cambridge, Canadian
Yeah.
young man, is visiting. This goes in the paper.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean, he understands
Oh,
communication.
yeah. Well, Elsie's presence was pure fiction. So they lie saying his mother
Ah.
is with too. Because we have to save face here. It's scandalous. Kareen's near fiance was present, as were two other young men intent on winning her hand. Within 2 days, according to Marshall's count, she had received proposals from 8 suitors.
Oh my
But it
gosh.
was, well, she's a high value, apparently. She's
A high value woman.
yeah, whatever that is. I'm going to start my pickup artist podcast in another
Yeah.
lifetime.
She's
Yeah.
bringing plenty to the table.
Yeah, apparently. Um, Yeah, but it was he who escorted her to the New Year's Eve ball at the Fort Worth Club with a dash of style, perhaps intended at once to convey a message to his rivals and demonstrate to Kareen that he was not as unromantic as she thought. You can see how fisticuffs would happen. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
And
Yeah.
he's probably picked up that like aloof Englishness
Yeah.
from his time in Cambridge. He's just a little like he's definitely interested, but a little not interested. And she's like, "Oh, who is this guy?"
Yeah. I imagine he's probably a bit of a cipher to her.
Hmm.
He's not like the other guys. Those other guys, they 3D print them in
Yeah, I've known them
Dallas.
for two
Yeah,
generations.
right. Yeah, they're all
I know their
predictable.
dad. I know their
Yeah,
granddad. Yeah.
yeah. This guy's going to end up doing this. That guy, this guy. What is he on about? Yeah. Oh, and he reads literature.
He
He's a
reads
literary
literature.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Resplendent in tails, top hat, and white gloves, he led her to the dance floor. Fort Worth had never seen anything like it. The other suitors were present, but paled into insignificance. When it came to the last dance of the evening, they all lined up at the edge of the dance floor, trying in vain to track Kareen and Marshall as they swirled round and round, trying to see if she would let him kiss her. It was the first of 42 New Year's Eves they would spend together. With Marshall returning to St. Louis, their grand evening would be their last for months of anguish and uncertainty. Each letter from Corrine, gratifying relief when it came, could fuel fresh anxiety when Marshall opened it. She was in a difficult position and made it clear. Her family did not understand him and were opposed to their marriage to her marriage to a Catholic in any case. He
Mm.
tortured himself with endless reassessments of their situation, imprisoned himself in a maze of introspection till he scarcely understood his own feelings. Having seen the lifestyle of the Lewis family only added to the great worry and doubt he already had about providing for Corrine. So he's like a rich Southern girl.
Yeah.
Let me see. Right. With the year's teaching ended, Corrine was on her way to Austin, Texas, to continue coursework at the State University, the University of Texas at Austin. Hook 'em horns. That's my other school. That's where Brad Kelly and I met.
Your alma
Uh,
mater.
yeah, the other alma mater. Yeah. Marshall joined her on the 10th of June. Tensions had built slowly but surely in their correspondence. Were not eased as they dined together that evening. It took a week to recapture the feeling they had discovered for each other on the Catalina Mountain, the thrill of the Fort Worth ballroom floor. During that week, Marshall met one of the local priests, Father Riak, and introduced Corrine to him. The priest was anxious to begin giving her instructions in the faith. She hesitated. I'm not going to marry Marshall, she thought, but why not listen if it will enlarge my experience? The next evening, that's how we get you. The next evening, near Barton Springs, it says outside Austin, but that's in Austin, they were engaged. I know
Oh.
right where this is. I used to live right down here. Feeling secure in the knowledge that they would be sailing for England together, Marshall returned to St. Louis the next afternoon. When Corine's course at Austin ended, she decided to return home by a circuitous route via St. Louis. Alighting from the long bus ride on the evening of the 17th of July, she was met by Marshall, who proudly rushed her straight to the home of Bernie and Mary Mullertime. At this time, Corine's St. Louis cousin, Mabel Strupper, was in Fort Worth, visiting the Lewises, who by now knew of the engagement. Quite forgetting that Mabel was from the obscure Catholic branch of the family, Corine's grandmother dispatched Mabel on a speedy return to St. Louis to free Corine from the clutches of the wicked Marshall. Ironically, with only enough money for 2 nights at a St. Louis hotel, Corine would have returned to Fort Worth if cousin Mabel had not arrived home just in time to put her up for a longer stay. Kareem bought Marshall a birthday pipe, and they celebrated the day over dinner in the nearby town of St. Albans, and and so forth. Um, I'm not done though. So this is wild. Listen to this. By the morning of the 3rd of August, she was alarmed to note that she had lost 10 pounds since her arrival, and she began packing to return home. But the next morning, she was still there. By mid morning, they had rings, a license, dispensation, and steamship reservations. Then she wired home with the message, am getting married in a few minutes.
Oh gosh.
I love it. Marshall and Corrine exchanged their vows at St. Louis Cathedral at the St. Louis University campus. Father Helmsing conducted the ceremony at the rectory between two funerals. Bernie Muller-Time was the best man, and cousin Mabel the bridesmaid. No one else was present but Mary Muller-Time. Afterward, a reply to Corine's telegram awaited them reading, wait at least until you come home, baby. All
Oh.
right. So they elope, and they
Well, it was not a smart move to dispatch Mabel, was it?
no, yeah, you can't trust those papists. Uh, but this is so, and I don't know what this word means, trousseau, but I'm going to read it. An instant trousseau was produced for Corrine by a legion of friends and acquaintances of the Lewis family amid a flurry of activity to make the post facto wedding the social event of the season. Photographs for the local newspaper went ahead, despite the absence of the groom. When Marshall arrived a day before they were scheduled to leave for New York, the air in the Lewis household was electric, though Corrine was too busy to be more than dimly aware of it. Her friends Mary Cecilia and Frank Crumley collected her and took her to the train station to meet Marshall, then earned the disapproval of the Lewises by taking the newlyweds for a drink before delivering them to the Lewis home. And they leave for New York, and then I believe they go to back to Cambridge. The whole thing was rushed because he didn't want to be separated from her. He had to go back to
Mm.
Cambridge, and and they
Don't
fell in
don't
love.
give her a time to change your mind. A
Nope.
trousseau is the clothes, linen, and other belongings collected by a bride for her marriage.
Okay. Interesting. I did not know that. Fun. Okay, so they go to Italy, they go over to England, and September 1939. Listen to this. What's about to happen? Marshall returned to the hotel with a basket of pastry and a bottle of Benedictine and broke the news to Corrine. They packed and dashed for the train to Boulogne, where they caught the last packet boat that would cross the channel for weeks. Arriving in London at
Mm.
midnight, they moved on to Cambridge in a jammed train the next day. The British ultimatum to Hitler was delivered on the 3rd of September. Returning from Mass that morning, their first full day in Cambridge, Marshall and Corrine learned that England was at war.
Yeah, not an ideal time for a honeymoon in Europe.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Well, so they move in, to Cambridge, and the impression I get is that it's a little bit of like a separate piece. They have their own little, you know, he wasn't going to, it's not like he was going to fight in the war.
No.
Um, he gets his MA the 20th of January 1940, and his time at Cambridge is winding down. He is going to get a PhD eventually. Um, yeah. Listen to this. More than a year after his grandstand performance on the Fort Worth ballroom floor, he commented to a friend, Texas men are incredibly infantile, and of course, as tough outside as they are slushy inside. Now it was time to expose the story of the American male in an article to be titled 50 Million Mama's Boys.
Wow.
Um, Yep, he wrote out of conviction and enthusiasm and with an urgency to communicate his idea to readers. By the middle of April, he was satisfied that he had found just the right touches to make his portrait of effete American manhood complete. He wrote to Elsie immediately. A few moments ago, I finished the Mama Boy article, which Karine is typing. You can't imagine my relief in getting this thing out of my system. Must now fly at the thesis. All right. So, where are you at right now with Marshall McLuhan, Abby? I'm going to stand up and get myself a quick break, but tell me where you are with this guy.
Where am I with Marshall McLuhan? I mean, he's a very curious character. Uh, there's there's an interesting aspect to him that I guess you wouldn't expect from the classic academic. The romantic nature is very interesting. The um the way I mean he seems to really just throw himself into things um with a passion and a fervor that's quite compelling. And I'm also interested in um just how confident he is in his own intellectual capacity and his own ability to do things. He's sort of got this like um he's obviously very intelligent. He's he's also got this like I mean, as he self-describes, like kind of like manliness about him that you wouldn't expect from somebody meeting his physical description. Like when they talk about the first time he meets Kareen and he's sort of this like rakish figure on like a in shorts and a Cambridge jacket. He doesn't seem to he like his personality doesn't quite fit with what I'm assuming he
Yeah,
looks like.
sure. I mean, yeah, he's the idea of like Marshall McLuhan as a Chad is
Yeah.
he's a Chad. Like, he rode for Cambridge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
and
like
he's and he falls
built boats and
passionately in
he
love.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and he's gonna
He
put
really is
he,
living life to the full, isn't he? He's like
yeah,
he's all in on life.
yeah, and he wants to like take on Canada.
Mm.
That's his ambition.
Well, and
Like, I'm gonna,
America,
yeah, and
obviously,
America.
at the
Yeah, and
moment.
these Texas men, they're a bunch of sissies. Like, that takes some stones,
Mm.
to say. I mean, I mean, clearly daddy issues, 100% daddy
Oh
issues
yeah.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
big time. And
Daddy's just fallen off the face of the earth at this moment. It's like his mum's like, "Well, I'm off to Pasadena to do some acting. I'll find my son a
a
wife, and
debutante. Yeah,
maybe we can start a new branch of this family."
absolutely.
What's Dad doing? No idea.
Yep. Yep. All right. So they would have six children. Uh,
Mm.
Eric, twins Marion, Teresa, Stephanie, Elizabeth, and Michael. Their family
Very
life.
biblical names.
Their family life was shaped by McLuhan's academic career, moving them between teaching positions in the U.S. and Canada before settling in Toronto. The McLuhan household was dynamic and often chaotic, with Marshall's intellectual pursuits intersecting with the demands of raising a large family. The impression I get is that it was pretty trad setup.
Mm,
Like Marshall works, Marshall makes the money. Marshall has a career. Corrine is home, pregnant, having the children. Um,
sure.
Apparently, she was a fine cook. She learned as she went, and
I mean, it
there's
like a fine cook in Britain at the time doesn't mean much.
excellent boiled potatoes,
Yeah,
excellent boiled beef.
can't taste a thing in these vegetables.
Yeah, we're just boiling everything.
Just boiling it all.
Boil, bubble, toil, and trouble. I am
Don't
actually. It's
add
been
any of those spices we invaded other countries for.
yuck. Let's have no colonialism in our diet. We
No.
have to have the most bland. I'm actually very curious because I was first over there in 2006, and between
Hmm.
2006 and say 2016, the food got remarkably better. It was
I completely
horrible,
agree. I moved here in 2006 and was appalled by the state of
horrible,
the coffee and,
shocking,
and the food.
shockingly bad. And
Yeah.
like now, but it's been like 5 years since I've been over there. I haven't been over there since 2019.
Hmm.
I can't wait. I actually can't wait to have some Indian food over there. I love the Indian food
The
in
Indian food's
London's
great.
superb. Yeah, and some kebabs, some late night kebabs. I got to get a
Yeah.
roast. Gonna be
Oh, yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I love those Sunday roasts. It's gonna be fun. Come and hang out with us March 24th at Verderin with our friend Pierre, who very kindly offered us space to do this Goya mini episode that we're going to do. I have my Goya book right here. I'm
I
should be
have
good.
my Goya book too. It's hefty.
All right. Well, we like yeah. Heft is good. Help us
We like
pay for the
heft.
books. Help us pay for the books. Patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod. Really. Okay, cool. So let's see here. He'd become famous eventually, but he kept a private life.
Mm.
So uh, during his time in St. Louis, he taught courses on Shakespeare and other writers. He earned a reputation as a challenging and innovative professor. There's a bit in the biography too where his mother comes to visit and is shocked that the students call him Marshall. He's like,
Oh, instead
"You
of
have
Mr. McLuhan,
Dr. McLuhan." Yeah, oh yeah.
Dr.
The
McLuhan.
the
Yeah.
mom was kind of like, "Really?" And Marshall was like, "No, this is better. It's better if we're
Yeah.
all collegial." And I have to I admire that. I really hate the stuffy being, you know what I mean? And if you're going to be in America and you don't want to be like, well, I went to Cambridge and blah, 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 you know what I mean? You're going to alienate
Yeah.
your, yeah, he wasn't that guy. And I do admire that. There's that sort of prairie populism, middle American, I have more in common
Mm.
with someone like Marshall McLuhan than I do from somebody out east in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. Just because he's on the other side of the line doesn't mean
Mm.
we don't. There's a sensibility out here which you're going to get to experience in April.
Hey.
Um, Coming, it's going to be fun. We're going to hang out. Yeah. So uh, the outbreak of World War II. He's in Cambridge. He's doing his doctoral dissertation on Thomas Nash and the verbal arts. Are you familiar with Thomas Nash?
No.
Yeah, I'm not either, but I'm going to look. Thomas Nash was an Elizabethan playwright, poet, satirist, and pamphleteer,
Okay.
known for his novel *The Unfortunate Traveler*. his pamphlets including Pierce Penniless and his numerous defenses of the Church of England. So this is what McLuhan's doing his, doing his work on, which very cool, fascinating.
Mm.
All right. Um, let's see here. By the time he returned to St. Louis, he had developed a sophisticated framework for analyzing the interplay between communication, culture, and technology. His dissertation laid the groundwork for much of his later work, including his focus on the trivium and the cultural consequences of media. In 1944, McLuhan moved to Assumption College in Windsor, Ontario, right across the river from Detroit, where he continued to explore his ideas about media and culture. Uh, so this is very interesting too to think about. Like the mid 40s, he's in this little town across the river from this monster of Detroit. Like Detroit is a
Hmm.
big city
Big
that's
industrial city.
gonna lose a football game tonight. They're gonna be real. They're gonna be real sad. Um, and like so, big industrial city, cars, and what advertising. And like
Mm.
the American lifestyle of the car coming out of Detroit, it still to this day infects the American psyche. And he would write about advertising. In fact, I think this might be a good chance for me to pull up some of his writing because now we have like a fully formed McLuhan. Um, uh, Here's an example of an essay that he would write to give you an idea of what he was all about. So this is 1952. This came out 1 year after the Mechanical Bride. I'm just going to read a few paragraphs of his thinking. This is this essay is called "Advertising as a Magical Institution." Confronted with the story of the GI clamor for the restoration of ads to their overseas magazines, many people hasten to conclude that ads are a baneful form of hypnotism which has corrupted our youth. What about those very numerous motorists who prefer to travel on highways well lined with billboards? What about the soldiers who found European scenery tedious because of the absence of commercial appeal? Are they any different from Dr. Johnson, who preferred the hubbub of London to the picturesque beauties of rural landscape? After all, ads are social situations. They are extensions of human language, and they provide the largest single base for ordinary intercommunication in modern society. That there is, however, a point of view from which advertising can be seen as a form of magical activity will be suggested later on. In the meantime, it is necessary to disabuse ourselves of certain stereotyped views of the entire subject of advertising in relation to social communication. One more para here. Some sociologists would do a real service by explaining the prevalence of guilt feeling associated with advertising. Even a little investigation will reveal that there is no single cause at work, but rather a complex cluster of causes which are as baffling and as pretentiously comical as a bundle of monkeys clinging to one another. An immediate consequence of the moral disapproval felt both inside and outside the ad agencies has been the militant do gooder response of the ad men. They argue that advertising is geared to industrial production and is really a means of applying its benefits to the mass market. Advertising, therefore, is good because it is a social instrument for raising the general standard of living. That is to say, advertising is a moral good because it belongs to the non moral world of applied science and mass production. This should at least suggest that the moral argument for or against advertising is worse than useless because it is profoundly confusing. Okay, it goes on. It's very high minded, like
Yeah.
stuff, right? I mean, what do you think? What do you think about that?
I it just occurred to me, I wonder if he was a big influence on there was a creative director of Saatchi and Saatchi for a long time called Paul Arden, who was perhaps one of the greatest thinkers in advertising. He came up with campaigns like the car in front is a Toyota, like as a bumper sticker that you would put on the bumper of a car, and a lot of the world's most famous campaigns. And when you read Paul Arden's writing, a lot of the ways that they think are quite similar.
Yeah,
Uh, and there are some people in advertising that have kind of elevated it to like an elite form of communication.
yeah,
I think this has dwindled considerably in the last decade. The the art that used to be in advertising, I haven't seen for a long time. I don't think it exists as much anymore, and I don't know if that's because, again, with the technology, we are not only all broadcasters, but we are now all advertisers, and
yeah, yeah.
so it's not being controlled by the few anymore. It's now gone out to the
Right.
many, and that's dissipated the quality of what's being put out.
It's a very keen insight, Abby. That's why we're going to do Art of Darkness together. Listen, listen to this. Commercial art has come to occupy the same prominent place in industrial society as ritual or magical art occupied in primitive society. Like, that's wild, like to think about. Um, so
Well, I
that's
mean,
what
yeah,
he's on.
what were cave paintings like?
Yeah, right. Somebody's
It's
trying
all
to get
just a
laid.
method of communication.
Yeah, yeah,
Hieroglyphs.
yeah, yeah. Um, all right. So in 19, what page am I on? I'm on page, oh, who cares? Um,
It's all
I'm
gone out
doing
the
our,
window now.
yeah, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. In 1946, McLuhan joined the faculty of St. Michael's College at the University of Toronto, where he would remain for the rest of his career. Toronto, which I once heard described as New York City for Mormons. That's what I heard.
Right? Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Have you ever been to
Yeah.
Toronto? I've never been.
I
I don't know.
haven't been to Toronto, but there was a company there that a construction company that was born out of Toronto that did do some of the more boring skyscrapers in downtown Manhattan, and then came over to London and built what is now Canary Wharf. And I mean, Canary Wharf at its inception felt like a Mormon
Mhm.
New York.
There you are.
So I understand. It's like
And Wharf is very Canadian, isn't it?
it is very Canadian. It's I mean the One Canada Square is the first building that went up, and yeah, it's very Canadian. It's very clean.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Canary Wharf is an area in London, for those who don't know. It's a
Yes.
very modern, American-looking part of London. It's weird. It's like stepping into a simulation.
It was
Uh,
originally for supposed to be a new financial area, a new financial hub to compete with the City of London. There were a lot of banks there, and ever since people have started working from home, they're all moving out, and I mean, it's a big question for the entirety of cities. What do we start putting in these buildings that are no
ooh.
longer occupied as offices? And I think there could be some exciting answers for that. I don't have them, but I think they could be exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. Um, okay. McLuhan was to find himself just as disturbed on meeting his Toronto classes in the fall of 1946 as he had been at Madison 10 years earlier, though for different reasons. The students expected him to dictate notes and were bewildered when he asked them for opinions. I am absolutely stunned by this discovery. When, with the fact fresh upon me, I hurried to Father Shook, he looked very embarrassed. Of course, he says, what else can we do? He doesn't seem to realize that this is the only university where such utter dishonesty prevails. It is hypocritical because by this means the exam questions are made to seem very mature. I was struck by this fact, but the exams are not studied for at all. Only class notes are memorized. A few variations are then played on these hackneyed themes. So he's saying when he got to Toronto, the students just wanted him to, what's on the test? Tell me the answers. What's on the test? McLuhan's like,
So people have been having these problems with university students for decades.
crazy. How do I get an A? Tell me what I need to do to get an
Yeah.
A. Well, can you think critically? Tell me what I need to do to get an A. Like, oof, brutal. McLuhan began meeting his new colleagues. On his spring visit to Toronto, he had already met the 62-year-old Etienne Gilson, who found him effervescent, witty, and looking for all the world like a football coach. Gilson and Maritain do belong to the community in which a general awareness of our age at all its points is cultivated. Yet both of these men have evaded, or for lack of time and faculty, they have done nothing, the applications of Thomistic principles to the area of Freud, Fraser, etc. Um, the thing about McLuhan is that he was trying to bring together multiple fields
Mm,
into a new understanding of contemporary media. That was his genius. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna take new criticism, English history, philosophy. We're gonna apply it to the world of media. Full stop. That
yeah.
was nobody else was doing that. Okay. All right. Uh, it's around this time that he made friends with Wyndham Lewis. Uh, I think I'm going to cover this. I'm gonna save these for the after dark for patrons. I'm thinking about the time. It's already we're already three some hours in. So we're going to talk about Wyndham Lewis, Ezra Pound, and Chesterton on the after dark.
The Trinity.
The Trinity, yeah, the other Trinity. I've got a whole section here about tearing the hide off of Canada. I'm going to read. McLuhan's phrase, tear the hide off Canada, reflects a deep seated dissatisfaction with what he perceived as the complacency and cultural stagnation of his home country. He viewed Canada as too often comfortable with its role as a passive receiver of ideas and innovations from the US and Europe. It's like a country in limbo. It's like a country
Mm,
that is and isn't at the same time. I mean, no disrespect to Canadians, but I think that they understand that there's this like little brother syndrome happening. Like they're not. Are they? What's their relationship to the UK? A little brother.
mm,
What's their relationship to the US? Little brother, like scary freak brother down the. You know what I mean? Who down below? Like, and they all live in this narrow strip. They all live within 100 miles of the border. So what is a Canadian identity? What are they?
right.
And I think he struggled with that. Um, and yeah, so we're going to talk a little more
And he's
about
not,
it.
not well, he's obviously not French Canadian
No,
if he's struggling to speak French.
no, he's not French
Um,
Canadian.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he was trying to kind of provoke Canada out of a stupor.
Mm,
He felt like, growing up, it was overshadowed by Britain's legacy of colonialism, and then, of
mhm,
course, the United States cultural dominance. For all our problems down here, like we are the main character,
mm.
and for better or worse. I know it's horrible
Oh,
sometimes,
they're
but
full of all those mama's boys.
well, yeah, we got issues down here. There are issues down here. Yeah. Um, So he felt like the country's identity, particularly in the early and mid 20th century, was defined by deference rather than assertion,
Hmm.
and it troubled him. He felt like Canadians needed to sort of rethink their role, um, and the politeness and the conservatism was a mask hiding a deeper inertia.
Right.
And so his intellectual provocation, was meant to tear the hide off of the country, like he said. So, and they weren't only aimed at Canada. I mean, he
Mm,
was a global figure. But here's what he really did. So he reframed media and communication. So asserting that the medium is the message fundamentally changes and challenges how people thought about communication. He urged people to stop focusing on the content of messages and instead consider the medium itself. That's massive. Like we
hmm.
take that for granted now. That was not how people understood things at the time. He critiqued cultural complacency. He would take on controversial ideas and figures, including Ezra Pound, the fascist.
Hmm.
We're going to talk about like he would had a relationship with Ezra Pound. I'm going to read Ezra Pound's most famous poem on the After Dark. It's a two-line poem, and and you have to imagine too, like bringing in essays on comic books as a Cambridge trained academic
Mm.
was revolutionary. You weren't supposed to. That wasn't worthy of your attention,
No,
right? Like,
no,
why are you
no.
writing about Dagwood? Why are you writing about Charlie Brown? Like, what are we doing? He's like, well, this is
Applying high-minded analysis to low art.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got it right here. He's got a chapter called "The Comics and Culture." I'll read the first paragraph. Somebody must have quipped long ago, let me make the people's comics and I care not who writes their songs. In the one day world of the newspapers, the comics are time binders, making possible a continuity of experience which is not to be found in the day to day news itself. Like, damn, dude, deep thoughts, deep thinking.
Well, I mean, if you think about how, uh, like how well thought and articulate, like political, like cartoons and things have to be,
Oh,
that
yeah,
is that is some deep layers of like communication in a panel.
absolutely. And it's communicating all kinds of information, but
Mm.
subtly. And this reminds me, so he came up with this idea of like hot and cool media. Are you familiar with this?
I think, yeah, I've heard of this.
Yeah. Uh, I'm gonna look this up right now. So his distinction between hot and cool media, hot media are high definition, meaning they provide a large amount of detailed information and engage one primary sense, sight or sound. And these media are
Hmm.
typically more complete, leaving less for audiences to fill in. So his examples of hot media are books, radio, film,
Hmm.
right? And then cool media are like low definition, sparse, less detailed information, multiple senses. And for him, television is a cool media, the
Hmm.
telephone and comics are a cool media. This idea I still don't fully grok,
Right.
but it's just such an interesting kind of concept. Hot media often foster passive consumption, whereas cool media encourage engagement and critical thinking.
I would put film in the cool media
Yeah,
if it's
see,
engaging more than one sense and
I know. Yeah,
it's
I'm not sure. Mhm.
but I mean like books and I guess the radio are still up for interpretation. Like you everything you are going to view through the singular lens of your experience.
Yeah.
But film and television and things like that have got subtext and performance to like layer onto that communication.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, we're definitely a hot media. I know that. Art of Darkness is a hot medium.
Red
Or
hot medium.
red hot medium. Artofdarkpod.com, baby. All right, so we're getting into his work, right? Um, he took that, the Catholicism that he embraced, like he really then became a prophet of the digital and of
Mhm.
technology. It was fascinating to think about. Like you really can kind of believe your way into a role. Um, and so I want to talk about his work real quick. Um, so his first major book was called The Mechanical Bride: Folklore of Industrial Man, and it was a pioneering study in the field of pop culture. He critiqued the pervasive influence of advertising and mass media in society. Some of the key themes to this book are advertising as modern mythology, which
Mhm.
I just, read. The book is structured as a series of short essays, each focusing on an advertisement or cultural artifact, encouraging readers to think critically about what's actually happening in the
Mm.
ad, right? Oh, if you get this car, you'll get the girl. Well, why do you want
Right.
the girl? Well, you want the girl because you want a family. Well, why do you want a family? Well, you want a family because you want to fit in. Okay, why do you want to fit? You know what I mean? Like, how deep can we? How deep does this go?
The super objective of the world is love.
Whoa, where's that from? You just make that up?
I made that up in university.
Well, okay. You heard it here first, people. The super objective of the world is love. All you need is love. Yeah, that's beautiful. All right. And then the title of the book references Marcel Duchamp's artwork, "The Bride Stripped Bare by Her Bachelors." Even so, it comes from Dadaism. I have a little bit about what the publishers were dealing with when they got this book in their
Oh
hands. It's
God.
actually really funny. Let me find this. I really, really like
Yeah.
this.
So we have some edits.
Yeah, exactly. As he waited for the Mechanical Bride to move through the press, McLuhan was both propping up book culture and bridging the gap to the post-Gutenberg era. Let me go a little further here. There was much consternation in New York, if not outright terror, and McLuhan's manuscript circulated among the staff of Vanguard Press. The work resisted the conventions of book production, defied the resourcefulness and ingenuity of the most benevolent editorial midwifery, and stunned the hapless publisher into inertia. McLuhan may have lost interest in the approach he had taken, but not in getting his book to the public. He began to boil. Giovanelli, well known to the Vanguard people, was on hand in New York, and McLuhan counted on his intervention. "This business is beginning to affect my health. Sheer rage and frustration first declared itself physically at your apartment when I arrived with that headache. A kind of heart condition associated with that same rage and headache occurs whenever I think about Evelyn," the editor. "This can't go on, but they mustn't know. I really depend on you, Felix, to break up this logjam. The editors would be delighted to think they were affecting my health. I mean that." You
I mean,
really
hey,
don't.
if you are a student of Finnegan's Wake and you're like, Joyce was able to get this published.
Yeah, you really don't want an adversarial relationship with your publisher.
No,
That's
no.
not good. You got to love each other. You got to be like, we have mutual respect
Yes.
and we understand each other. Yeah, I'm fortunate to have, yeah, very Broadway play publishing. Good people. Very easy to work with. They understand how crazy I am.
Shout out Broadway
Um,
plays.
yeah. Thank you guys. Yeah, no, go buy my script. Go buy Moderation, moderationplay.com. Um, all right. Also a hot medium. Uh, this is funny, Abby. At home, McLuhan found his children getting to be more manageable and interesting. They were also getting, yeah, it's nice when the children
They were
become
starting to
interesting.
talk, yeah.
Yeah. They were also getting more numerous. A fourth daughter was born to the McLuhans on the 2nd of August, 1950, and christened Elizabeth in honor of the saint Anne. By this time, Amy Dunaway had long since returned to England. Corrine had the support and help of many good neighbors and babysitters from the ranks of the students. She also had a husband who was always too distracted to hone his domestic skills. Willing to perform such tasks as loading and clearing the washing machine, he minded the waiting in between. Assigned to kitchen duties, he was capable of washing one dish endlessly, a bit of stage business subordinated to his monologue, unless told to pass it along for drying. For her part, Corrine could not afford self-indulgent behavior or any other luxury. She acquired a reputation as an interesting cook with a great talent for the preparation of economical dishes of meatloaf, beef, and lamb stews and soups of all kinds. All right. So,
Well, he does like his beef, so.
yeah, he does. He needs his beefsteak. All right. So yeah, this is a very big book. The Mechanical Bride. It was his first entry into the study of pop culture, and in the book, he employed what he called a mosaic approach, presenting a series of fragmented nonlinear analyses rather than one single cohesive argument.
I could see why his publishers might be annoyed with him.
I could see that too, but also like if you're going to come out and say the medium is the message, then
Mm,
if you're trying to communicate the fragmented nature of mediated reality, then your
and it
book
has to
should
be in
mirror that.
fragments. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean maybe a little clever, but I think we get it, right?
Hmm.
Here are a few things. Ads are carefully designed by the Madison Avenue frogmen of the mind to leap into the collective pool of the subconscious and be silently absorbed. They are intended as subliminal pills for the subconscious in order to exercise a hypnotic spell, especially
Mm.
on sociologists. And then on consumerism, it is the continuous pressure to make buying the central activity of human existence that has turned advertising into the art form of the 20th century.
Yep.
You don't get Mad Men without McLuhan. The
No, no,
Mad Men
you
is
don't.
100% McLuhan. You know, I had a realization when I was a teenager that we were living in some sort of an artificial simulated reality when I was at the mall and in Bismarck, North Dakota,
Hmm.
and I was shopping or loitering, and that song came on from NSYNC, and it was "Bye Bye Bye."
Oh,
And I
wow.
remember going, "Oh, that's a subliminal." I remember realizing that's a subliminal. Like that's
Yeah,
not even subtle, right? And why would they pipe that into the mall? Well, of course, right? I mean, that's what that is. And
right.
I know that's very obvious, but it really is. And once you start thinking about, the advertising as the most significant art form of the 20th century, that opens up Warhol, and that makes pop art
Mm.
make sense, and so many things makes sense. Punk music makes sense. Yeah. I feel like you maybe have some thoughts about that, Abby. What do you think?
Um, I mean, yeah, again, I think like there is a distinction between advertising that is high like art and advertising that is. I mean, nobody's going to like look at an infomercial or anything that has like a star around the price and think that is art. But um, I think the way that advertising speaks to something quite deep within us about who we who we are, who we aspire to be, and captures that and gets us to part with one of our most precious possessions, our money that we've traded a lot of like effort and hard work for is I mean it's really something. It's uh I think some of the best advertising is the one is the advertising that captures some sort of like wonder or aspiration or hope for a person. Like obviously it's horrible
Yeah.
that a lot of advertising speaks to trying to find like hate, particularly within women of themselves,
Oh
and
yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah.
and implants like insecurity. But the ones that you can look at and go, oh yeah, I really aspire to that is that's genius communication. I mean, just do it is always the
Hmm.
Nike symbol is always talked about as like a genius piece of like of marketing that you see all these like amazing sporting figures and then you get this this just very three-word quick message to
Yeah.
like
And then go. Yeah,
go.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, stop complaining. But it's also very strongly subliminal. It's like
Mm.
just get the product.
And
Just
then yeah, like the highest forms of it as well have employed some of our greatest artists of like fine art to lend their talents towards advertising. Like Richard Avedon, who was an amazing photographer, did a lot of advertisements. Obviously you need illustrators and painters and all of those sorts of people, particularly in times before
Mhm.
we could do digital art to add their talent to advertising. So, some of the world's greatest film directors have directed some of the world's greatest ads.
We're available and we'll sell
We
out
are
some
available.
very cheap. Where our hourly, you can afford us. Trust me.
And
No, that's that.
some things are worth advertising. They are.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen,
It's not all
I,
bad.
it makes me get a little bit sentimental too because like I have my young family, my little
Mm,
children, and we have the Disney network, with the Disney streaming, and my daughter, my little 2-year-old daughter, is a freak for Donald Duck, like I
yeah.
was, and I love Donald Duck. I'm gonna take those kids to Disney
Mm.
World at some point, and probably
Oh,
spend eight to ten
so
thousand
much
dollars,
money.
like so
Yeah.
much stupid money. Probably
But
not
at
that much, but
Disney,
you know what I'm saying.
wow.
And
The
like
amount of thought they have put into every little aspect of everything at that place is just astounding.
it's astounding, and I have all kinds of strong feelings about
Mm.
Disney, the products, all of it. And if you don't think you do, you're delusional. Like if
Mm.
you do, you have lots of associations with Disney. That is our modern folklore. That is our modern myth,
Yeah.
and yeah, and you bet I want to put my daughter on my shoulder and walk around Disney World with her, partly because of those ads,
Right.
and because you want to have that magic. You have to have that, right? Yeah. So and nobody's above or outside of this,
Yeah.
and I think that's McLuhan's point. So in any case, fun. Good. We're moving along, Abby. We're getting on with it.
Right.
So so now he's
He's
now
come
he's
up with some of his greatest thoughts.
it's like he emerges kind of like fully formed and ready to rock.
Hmm.
Mm. And uh, the next major book is a decade later, and it's called The Gutenberg Galaxy: The Making of Typographic Man. And this is a groundbreaking work and this is in '62. Uh, and he explores the transformative effects of print technology on Western culture and cognition. So we're talking in this book about the shift from oral to print culture,
Hmm.
arguing that the invention of movable type created a visual centric culture that emphasized linearity, individualism, and rationality. This is the
Mm.
book where he introduced the concept of the global village,
Hmm.
suggesting that electronic media was re-tribalizing society by restoring oral communal communication patterns. Whoa.
Wow. And this is before the internet.
Yeah, yeah, and here we are, right? And uh, so here are a few things, right? He he earned the Governor's General Award in some big award in Canada, and cemented his reputation as a media theorist. This book foreshadowed the interconnected digital age that we inhabit now. I'm going to have some quotes here. The invention of typography confirmed and extended the new visual stress of applied knowledge, providing the first uniformly repeatable commodity, the printed word.
Mm.
Fascinating. Fascinating. On the shift from oral to print culture, phonetic writing from the Greeks to the present brought about the separation of the knower from the known, the subject and the object. But the printed book, as the first teaching machine, made this separation and extension possible on a mass scale. The book changed everything. I
Yeah.
mean,
You've
it
got now
did.
got something that's physical and permanent, and it's there in literally in black and white. Um, uh, I mean, obviously, ideas are disputable, so you can dispute what's in it, but it's got less of that layer of unreliable narrator that the oral culture has.
Yeah. I mean, and you can base an entire reformation of a religion on
Mm,
the translation of the book. I have the Bible now. What does this say to me
mm,
now? Who are you in your fancy hat, you know, in Rome to
yeah,
tell me, you know, it's huge, changed everything. Yeah. All right. Cool. So let's see here. And then on the global village, the new electronic interdependence recreates the world in the image of the global village. All right. So In 1963, he established the Center for Culture and Technology at the University of Toronto. And this is a big moment in his career, right? So the idea for the center emerged as his reputation grew in the 50s and 60s. The Mechanical Bride and the Gutenberg Galaxy had begun to solidify his status as a pioneering thinker. And to keep McLuhan at the University of Toronto, because he was getting offers, the
Hmm.
university and external sponsors created the center as a dedicated space for his research and teaching. It was housed in a modest coach house behind St. Michael's College. That's how you know you're winning. You're winning at life when they start dedicating buildings on campus to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will give you a whole building to keep you here.
What do you think the salary is for the coach of the University of Texas at Austin football team, Abby? How much do you think he makes a year? Sarkeesian.
Mm. I mean, I'm not entirely sure of the amount of money that's going through. So I'm going to say 1 million.
He makes over $10 million a
Oh
year.
my God.
I was looking this up earlier because they're like, oh, is the NFL going to come for coach? And 10 million a year. Yeah, yeah.
College football.
Yeah, yeah. At the University of Texas at Austin. Yeah.
My gosh.
Listen, they're in the semifinals,
I
Abby. They're in the semifinals, okay? Okay. Okay.
this it's kind of disgusting.
The players get paid now. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah,
sure.
sure. Right. Uh Hook 'em horns. All right. So he's got his own center now at the University of Toronto. The center's mission was to study the interplay of culture, technology, and communication, particularly the impact of media on human perception and society. McLuhan described it as a place for interdisciplinary exploration, drawing on insights from fields like anthropology, literature, and sociology to understand the extensions of man through media. And I love this idea that he has that media is an extension of our humanity.
Mm,
Like the somebody's making the television, somebody's making the TV show, um, somebody's
right.
making the physical hardware. Like
I
it's
mean,
almost like a stage of our evolution somehow. It's
yeah, we are all storytellers and we all need to build and find the way to impart those stories.
yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. All right. I mean that's what I do, right? So okay.
Well, and
Uh,
media is such a dirty word, like
mm,
these days. Like the
mm,
media studies, it sounds, I don't know, it's like it doesn't sound very highbrow, but when you talk of it as an extension of ourselves,
mm,
it is. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think when people talk about media, they're necessarily thinking about also books and radio and that type of thing. They're sort of thinking about television and news and
And social media, which of course,
yeah.
as a phrase, is totally redundant. I
Oh,
mean, it's like give me an example of media that is not social. Like
right.
it's redundant. Um, the center ended up getting money from the Ford Foundation.
Hmm.
He did get some criticism for his scholarship being a little kind of hand wavy, right?
Okay.
Like I say this, so this is this. You know, there
Right.
there is a bit of that. You read him, you're like,
He was
are we
preaching.
just yeah, are we just throwing we're just throwing pasta to see what
Okay.
sticks. Is that what
Yeah.
we're doing here? You know, I mean, I understand the desire to provoke, but like, what are we really talking about? You
Right.
can see that he might rub certain people the wrong way. And then also like
Okay.
the idea of like an academic rock star that bothers some people,
Yeah.
particularly other academics who aren't.
Hmm.
That really
We've
bugs
got to
some
be
people.
very serious and
Hmm.
like do our research and teach our students and have our little in-fight drama that we like to
Yeah.
have.
Right. And if anything is too popular, it must be sus. There must be something,
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah. And class, of course. Um, all right. So his breakout work, Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man, 1964, introduced his most famous aphorism, the medium is the message. This idea, revolutionary at the time, suggests that the characteristics of a medium, whether it be print, radio, TV, or the internet, are more significant than the content it conveys. For example, a light bulb doesn't contain content, but its ability to create spaces for human activity has a
Mm.
profound social impact. I I kind of split the difference. I think it's both. I think it's
Right.
both the thing communicated and the matter of communication. And I one of my greatest insights as a playwright when I really became an artist, when I was over there studying theater, is when I realized the way that you can marry structure in your story to the metaphor of what you're trying to
Hmm.
communicate. And it seems so very basic to say, but when you're in your 20s and you don't know, you know, up from down, realizing that in a really intimate way is amazing. And there's somebody right now figuring that out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's because we talk about this all the time. Like, if you've got a story, like, is it a play? Is it a novel? Is it a film? Is it and these are all very different things. And there's merits to telling them in one way or another. And I think perhaps the the gist of it is that, like, if you tell this thing that's supposed to be a novel as a play, are you going to lose the message because you're not telling it in the correct way?
Exactly. Yes. And then once you settle on a given medium, okay, we're going to do this in the theater, then
Mm,
structurally, how do we reinforce the message?
mm,
That gets back to the exact same thing, that we were talking about a few minutes ago when his book was like a pastiche. Well, I'm
yeah.
talking about media effects. Media effects are like that. One minute you're looking at a car ad, the next minute you're seated for a movie, and then you go home and then you put the radio on, and then in the
Oh, it's
morning
just
you open the
constant.
newspaper. Just constant. And what does media mean really? It's
Mm,
it's the thing in between. It's moderation. It's
mm,
the thing in between you and reality
yeah.
is what it is. And it's an addiction for sure.
Hmm.
Like have you tried like a 4 day no phone, no
No.
computer, just your own thoughts
Uh,
in
I
recent memory?
haven't. I haven't. I I think I'd be okay.
Yeah, I
I have a very
no
active
no books.
imagination.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah. I'm not, and I'm not trying to
Listen,
challenge you. Yeah, I'm
listen,
listening.
I had parents who worked very hard. There were many days that I was not picked up at school at 3:30 in the afternoon. It would sometimes have to be until 5. I wouldn't have a book with me. The library wouldn't be open. I could daydream. I could like actively daydream for that amount of time and not be bored.
But
I think I could do it.
can we at least agree that you're the odd duck out? Like most
Yes,
people would
yeah,
not want
and
that.
I would say that yeah, the majority of my days are spent consuming some form of media, and I work in media, you know.
Yeah.
Uh but I think if I was forced, gun to my head, to do 4 days without any type of media and not go crazy, I could do it.
I think you could. I think I could too. But you have to sort of like it would be jarring.
It would be jarring.
That's the point. It
Yes.
would be jarring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So yeah, I would want a book. I would
Yeah.
desperately want a book. What I would end up doing is writing. That's
Right.
what I would end up doing. And
Ah,
even
but
if
would you be allowed to do that if there's
I would start doing it in my
oh, you do
head.
it in your head? Yeah.
Yeah, right. To not go mad. Yeah. That's what I would do. Yeah. You know what we're describing actually is jail.
What? Yeah.
Take my word, you don't want to end up there.
No,
Not
I
a
know,
good
but
time.
sometimes when I think about it, I'm like, oh, you want me to be alone with my thoughts? Okay.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like a holiday.
I
All
will
right.
I'll
Okay.
go to another place in my head.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So he's introducing his core ideas now. It's the '60s, the swinging '60s. He defines hot and cool media. Hot media like film deliver high definition information with minimal audience participation, while cool media like comic books demand greater engagement from their audiences. Okay.
Hmm.
A lot to pick apart there. Fine. So, he has this to say: the medium is the message because it is the medium that shapes and controls the scale and form of human association and action. The content or uses of such media are as diverse as they are ineffectual in shaping the form of human association. That is fucking wild.
Mm,
What he's saying is it does not matter what's projected on the screen. What matters is that we gather in the room to watch the
view it.
projection.
Yeah. Tree
That's
falls in the woods.
crazy. Like that's so heavy. And that like, yeah, The Godfather 2 is like the best thing that's ever been projected on the screen, but it itself does not signify or matter more than the fact that we're sitting together watching the
Yeah.
projection.
I mean, when we put on a play or make a film or anything, I mean, obviously the process is nice, but what we want is an audience to tell that story to.
Hmm. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, it's like what's the impulse underneath?
Mm,
Why do we want to get together in a dark room and watch Marlon Brando make faces? You know? Like what is that serving? That's and then
yeah.
now we can actually start discussing what society is and what this media serves to do. Fascinating.
Mm,
Deep, deep, deep thinky, heavy. Love it. Love it. All right, a little more. Societies have always been shaped more by the nature of the media by which men communicate than by the content of the communication. Incredible. A hot medium is one that extends one single sense in high definition. High definition is the state of being well filled with data. A cool medium, on the other hand, is low in definition and high in participation or completion by the audience. And I can see the comic book is obvious, right? You're filling in the
mm,
gaps between each frame. There's actually very little information, but it conveys volumes very slightly compared to say again, I don't know, The Seventh Seal. That movie is
yeah.
just, especially you're thinking about like sitting down in the third row, the lights come out, lights go down, and you're just bathed in sensorium. You're just hit with,
Right.
yeah, yeah. Much like listening to the Art of Darkness podcast
Allow
with Kevin
us to
Kautzman
bathe
and.
you in
We
sensorium.
have a tete-a-tete and then bathe you in sensorium. Whew, it's getting hot in here. Holy moly. Let's go. All right. The global village, another enduring concept. And I promise I'm going to bring this home. I'm going to bring this home and then we're going to do After Dark, Abby. Um, Another enduring concept from understanding media is the global village. McLuhan predicted that electronic media would collapse geographical and cultural boundaries, creating a world where people are interconnected in unprecedented ways.
Mm.
Abby, I grew up with Depression era German speaking farmers and rotary phones. You're like one of my best friends. You're from New Zealand and
Yes.
live in London.
Yeah.
How weird. What a weird world. Like our ancestors would
Very,
be like,
very strange world.
very strange to think about. Yeah. You
Um,
don't even know where
there,
North Dakota is on a map.
I know where it is on a
Yeah,
map.
okay. Now you
I remember when I was young, we had a pen pal program
Oh,
with kids at
yeah.
a school in America. And so our teachers would arrange like a kid for us to write to, and we would write about our experiences growing up as a child in New Zealand, and we would send it to these kids in America, and they would write back to us. I mean, so I guess we've been a global village for a
Y-
while, just in a very slow way, and it's gotten faster and faster and faster as technology has emerged. But I was writing to a child in this he was in the south of America somewhere. I can't remember exactly where, but somewhere very rural and small, and he had never seen the ocean. And I saw the ocean every day of my life, and it blew my mind that he had never in his life seen the ocean.
I, yeah. No, I can relate to that. Yeah, that's really fun. Yeah, the ocean is, I'm a river guy. That's me.
I've seen other bodies of water,
Yeah,
just
yeah. I live by the river.
not the ones that connect us to other countries, but
Hmm
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
We finally have a coastal elite on the show here, people, by the way.
all
This is
right,
a
my
big
whole
development for
country
the
is
show.
coastal elites.
I would love to. I genuinely would love to see New Zealand one day. I would.
It's
I'm
very
excited to
beautiful.
show you Minnesota. Minnesota is underrated. You're going to have a good time. We're going to have a
Yeah,
lot of fun. We're going to take you out to eat, and we're
we
right
we
down.
go
I
to
just
Prince's
realized we're
house.
uh, probably not. But we live right down by the this Art of Darkness Studio West. You can
Yeah.
walk to the Mississippi. We got to show you the Mississippi River, and yeah,
I've
it's going to be
seen
fun.
it in New Orleans, but I have not
Hmm.
seen the other
We
end
get
of
to
it.
see the headwaters. You get to see
Mm,
the other side. New Orleans is a great town. God,
yeah.
terrible what happened here recently.
Mm,
That was awful. All right, let's bring this on home, okay? So he was right, right? Like decades later, the advent of the internet and social media proved he was right, and
yeah.
Global Village is right. Like you and I, if we had to reach somebody in remote China tomorrow, if it was a life or death matter, we could do that. It's crazy. It's
We could do that
like
in seconds.
in seconds. Yeah, which is crazy and like magic. It's like indistinguishable
Yeah.
from magic. Yeah, and also like the standard of living that we enjoy now is just light years ahead of 100 years ago. It's just unthinkable. It comes with has problems. Like people go
Yeah.
Looney Tunes because of it. But all right. So then he did a book called "The Medium is the Massage." Okay, so it's 1967, so the Beatles have happened. Okay.
hmm
Um, this visually experimental book, co-created with graphic designer Quentin Fiore, rephrases and elaborates on ideas from understanding media. The book explores how various media massage the human sensorium, altering, perception and consciousness. And of course, it's a pun. So,
Yeah.
he's doing his sort of he's trotting it out. Here's what he has to say. All media are extensions of some human faculty, psychic or physical. The wheel is an extension of the foot. The book is an
hmm
extension of the eye. Clothing, an extension of the skin. Electric circuitry, an extension of the central nervous system. Environments are not passive wrappings, but active processes which are invisible. The ground rules, pervasive structure, and overall patterns of environments elude easy perception. Okay. He's talking about technological environments. He's talking about like the way that a city is a technology.
hmm
Like we're surrounded by technology. It disappears into the horizon because it's so pervasive. Um, it would be so fascinating just to like, this is going to freak me out. I'm actually going to freak out. It would
Uh-oh.
be crazy to think about like how many hours of a given week in your life are mediated,
Right.
like by some kind of technology. Most of it, all of it, really.
All of it.
Just the fact that you live in a city.
Yeah.
Like we're not all like, we can't go be goat herds, right?
No.
Like that's not who we are. So it's literally our
No, but
entire lives are
even if
spent.
we, yeah, if like, do you mean like we're herds of goats or
No, I'm just
herding
saying we,
goats?
we we can't all be like, disconnected Amish in the
Right.
woods,
But even if we were herding goats, we'd have some form of technology.
Right. You're right.
It wouldn't be sophisticated technology, but it would be technology in some form.
Yeah. Every one of you people has a phone, and every one of you people has $5 to donate to the Patreon. I know this. And if you don't, that's okay. We like giving you the core episodes for free. But if you want another hour of this, you're going to have to pony up and go to patreon.com/artofdarkpod or substack.com/at artofdarkpod. Get the annual subscription. Get back on board. Support Art of Darkness. Abby's already doing Coco Chanel research. It's going to be amazing. Your friendly neighborhood fascist perfumer. You can go down to the mall. It's going to be fun. Chanel's going to be a banger.
As long as there are daddy issues in the world, there will be episodes of Art of Darkness.
if you want to support fatherless behavior, artofdarkpod.com, we welcome your shekels. We welcome your dollars. Your lay that dollar down, baby. All right, we're coming on in home here. We've got this book or this essay, The Future of Sex, that he wrote for Look magazine, which friend of the pod, Stanley Kubrick, I think took photographs for when he was younger.
Hmm.
We're going to read some of that uh, on the After Dark. He said in that essay, you're going to love this, Abby. The pill makes woman a bomb.
Oh.
Oh, the future of sex. Going to be good.
Oh.
The pill makes woman a bomb. Okay.
I
It's,
mean,
mm-hmm.
I have several thoughts about how that could go.
Yeah. We know he's a woman respecter. He's not a
Yes.
misogynist. So, but we'll
Yeah.
talk about it. Yeah. Go ahead. What do you
No,
think?
I mean, I would love to know how he elaborates on the pill makes woman a bomb. But I mean it could go down the route of the pill gave women more freedom to choose the path of their lives in many
Hmm.
ways.
Yeah.
Um, but also the hormonal effect that the pill has on women um, can be quite explosive.
Mm.
But also, um,
Well,
I mean, there's been a lot of studies that the pill can even alter what a woman finds attractive in
yeah,
men.
a woman will come off the pill and then it's like divorce time, or like they're
Yeah.
not. Yeah, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
it like
Yeah.
it alters your hormones, which alters your brain chemistry, and
Hmm.
yeah.
It. I'm not in the pill game. As the
I mean,
resident Catholic.
y you would think that McLuhan wouldn't be in the pill game either.
No, no, but he has something to say about it for
He's got
sure.
things to say about
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot to say about it for sure. We're swimming up
I
that
read
river,
once that
Abby.
the Catholic Church was responsible for so in the pill days they have 7 days of
Yeah,
a
placebo.
sugar pill, yeah, which is meant to bring on your menstruation. There's there was some research that was done that said that women like aside from that it obviously is biological function, don't actually need to menstruate unless they are using that cycle for like having children. So the reason they even put the sugar pill in the packet of pills was to placate the Catholic Church when
What?
they were trying to bring it to market.
Really?
Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. I'd have to do some more reading. I mean, the church
yeah.
opposes all contraception, but still, my biggest tweet to this day is a real Catholic would never pull out. Concerning our current president, apparently he's still the president. Um, yeah, no, that's interesting. But the pill was like earth shattering, and
Mm.
again, but I feel like, and we're gonna get on with the episode here, and then come back for After Dark too. But like, I I'm under the impression that the pill has kind of fallen out of favor. Is that
Well, I
among
mean,
young women?
why would people want to pump hormones into their body like
It
that if they don't have to? Like
right,
it's there's the non-hormonal IUD used to like can is now available to all women
sure,
even as an emergency contraception, but 10, 15, 20 years ago they were saying to women that they weren't, at least in the UK, they weren't offering it to them unless they had already had children for some reason. Like I maybe they thought that your chances of fertility would be less if you were using the hormonal coil, but now they the
hmm,
non-hormonal coil, but now they've decided that that's safe and you can just from a young age onwards like use that. So if you had the option of something that wasn't going to alter your hormones and make you potentially gain weight or like get angry or like
Start a
be
podcast.
tired or start a podcast, like go for men that you're not normally interested
Yeah,
in. Like why would you?
that's what freaks me out is like I can't imagine being. I mean, I'm a man, so I just would just go at anything. You know what I mean? But
Right.
like, yeah, I mean, but I mean, I can't imagine like as a woman, like you take this thing and then it like you suddenly you're going for like betas and like guys that are you otherwise wouldn't be attracted to. It's very well, and of course it's also like
Yeah, or just
yeah, if you
having thoughts that you wouldn't normally have, or
yeah,
like
it's creepy.
feelings you wouldn't normally have, like
Yeah,
fatigue, and
sure.
you might end up with deep vein thrombosis if you fly on a plane. Like the list of side
Yeah.
effects is long and terrifying.
You heard it here first, okay? The pill makes a woman a bomb, all right? You could email Marshall McLuhan at gmail.com if you have a problem. All right. So, his Catholicism, all right? Speaking of the pill, all right?
Hmm.
Uh, he drew on Catholic philosophers like Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who I know Brad is super into. Um, Teilhard's notion of the noosphere, a global consciousness interconnected through communication, aligned with McLuhan's idea of the global village. However,
Hmm.
McLuhan warned against uncritically accepting such concepts. Um, he collaborated with the Catholic Church, so his expertise in media and communication did not go unnoticed by Mother Church. He was invited to advise church leaders on media strategy, particularly in the wake of the Second Vatican Council. You know about the Second Vatican Council, right? Vatican II. It's where
No,
they. No, you don't. Oh,
no.
so this was the Vatican Council in the '60s where they changed the format of mass. So they went from serving mass facing the altar in Latin to facing the congregation and serving mass in the vernacular.
Right,
It was the biggest change in the church for 1,000 years. It's still controversial. So if you hear about like somebody who's a trad cath, that typically what that means is they try to go to Latin mass and da da da. You
right.
can the mass can still be served in Latin in the traditional format, but it's most typically served. Our church actually in Roseville, which maybe you'll see. It's a fun story. They had the design of the church like the architecture already done and ready. But then the Vatican Council came along, the Vatican II came
Mm.
along and said, no, 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 we're going to change, we're going to gather people around. So our church is actually one of the first examples of Vatican II architecture. It's like, it's circular, like the church is round and people are on 3/4 of the altar, it, like gathers everybody around. So it's different. Yeah. Anyway, it's a beautiful little
Well,
church.
I guess if you're trying to get the message out in the vernacular is probably the best
Yeah.
way to do it.
Yeah, I mean that was the church's answer to modernity was Vatican
Mm.
II, and Saint John Paul, was a driving force behind that. And yeah, it's still controversial. Some people feel like it was too modernizing,
Mm.
but Catholic just means universal. So it's everybody's welcome. All right, unless you're on the pill. Kidding. Um,
Get
so,
out.
but get out. Season of the Witch. All right, so the during the 60s and the 70s, as his reputation grew, church leaders sought his insights into the transformative effects of modern media. The Second Vatican Council had emphasized the importance of communication and spreading the gospel, and the Pontifical Council for Social Communications was charged with implanting these directives. McLuhan participated as an informal advisor, providing guidance on the church on how the church could harness the potential of emerging technologies like television, radio, and film. He
Mm.
stressed that the church needed to understand the environmental impact of media, not just the content, but the medium itself. He argued that each medium reshaped how people thought, interacted, and perceived the world. For the church, this meant adapting its message to align with the psychological and cultural shifts introduced by new media technologies. For example, he warned against simply broadcasting sermons on television without understanding how the medium's inherent qualities, its immediacy, visual dominance, and audience passivity might affect the reception of the message. So, if you're going to get anybody to sort of work for you to talk about media at the highest level, it's this guy. He's like the Pope of media. Um, Throughout his
Well,
career, he
I
viewed.
guess you don't really see much well, you don't see much of it any now at all because we don't really have terrestrial television. But I remember when there were sermons on TV, and they definitely were not Catholic.
Oh yeah, well the evangelicals, I mean, they used that for a long time.
Mm,
And I'm sure they still do. They still must have their channels and their
the
reach.
televangelist.
Yeah, pretty gnarly. You know,
But in
one of
New
the
Zealand, it would have been C of E, like Anglican
really.
broadcast. Yeah.
Mm, mm. The One of the most popular podcasts in the world is a Catholic priest reading the Bible. It's so funny
Wow.
too because like the Protestants just they incessantly accuse us of not like we're a Bible-based church. That's what they say, and it's like literally like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, we read the Bible too. We have a Bible. We wrote the Bible. We That's our Bible. You know what I mean? It's so dumb. But whatever. People have their biases and everything. But yeah, no, that was a very popular podcast, and now they have one that's like the Rosary in a year and everything. I think that stuff's wonderful. You have your own, belief. I have my own belief, but like I think anything that brings people comfort and joy and brings
Mm,
people into the fold of community is like laudable, as long as
mhm.
it doesn't, end up, becoming a corrupting influence. So,
Yeah, of course.
and he was right to have to like some you have to think about like is the mass viable like through the television?
Mm,
Like it probably is. Like you could probably have what as a Catholic you would consider to be sort of like Eucharistic comfort if you're unable to actually be physically present at the mass, but you can watch it through the television. You can participate in a way. Like God's power is unlimited. So in theory, it's like you got to think. The church is going to spend time thinking about this kind of thing, and who better
it
than
it's
McLuhan?
interesting though. Like I guess as I said before, a lot of my experience of Catholicism is through art, but it's also through having visited places in Europe and the churches there, which are, they've got the frescoes and they're very ornate and it's very grand. And
Hmm.
I don't know, there's something about TV that I think would go against Catholic branding.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting to think about. I mean, they televise mass.
Right.
I mean, like pretty much every parish. Well, not every, but I mean, our mass is televised. If you want to watch Father Mark and his homily, you can find it. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they serve a lot of like people who are homebound or
Mm,
older or can't make it. So I don't know, but bringing this back around to McLuhan. Um, he viewed the church as a countercultural force capable of navigating the challenges posed by modern media. And one of the key ideas of Catholicism, which doesn't get enough attention, is the idea of the inherent human dignity. It's super important to the church. It's why we oppose abortion. It's why we most of the ideology or most of the dogma flows from this idea of human dignity. It's
mhm.
why there's no euthanasia. There's no, even contraception is sort of like roots back to that idea. And you can take or leave all of that. You don't have to, whatever, co-sign it. But you can see how someone like McLuhan would then apply that notion to technology and how
Right.
technology dehumanizes us. This goes all the way back to friend of the show, Mary Shelley and
Hmm.
Frankenstein. Like people have been worrying about this for hundreds of years,
Yeah.
and rightly so. Um,
I mean, we're coming up to we are on the precipice of AI taking over a lot of our jobs and everything. And what is more dehumanizing than robots creating the art?
Scary, legitimately scary. All right, Abby, I know it's getting late there, so I'm gonna bring this home. We're gonna have to. I hope you had fun. I hope everybody had
I
fun
have had
as we.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
good.
hope
You learn a
everyone else
lot,
has
right?
had fun.
Yeah, we have fun on Art of Darkness. It's a good time. So okay, I gotta wind this down. I got so much extra stuff. There's a 1969 Playboy interview. If you want to go
Oh,
read
okay.
that,
Okay,
I
we
mean,
read Playboy for the articles.
yeah, I read it for the art. I read it for the news stories. I mean, listen to this. Just a paragraph, right? Before the invention of the phonetic alphabet, this is McLuhan, man lived in a world where all the senses were balanced and simultaneous, a closed world of tribal depth and resonance, an oral culture structured by a dominant auditory sense of life. The ear, as opposed to the cool and neutral eye, is sensitive, hyper-aesthetic, and all-inclusive, and contributes to the seamless web of tribal kinship and interdependence in which all members of the group existed in harmony. The primary medium of communication was speech, and thus no man knew appreciably more or less than any other, which meant that there was little individualism and specialization, the hallmarks of civilized Western man. Tribal cultures, even today, simply cannot comprehend the concept of the individual or of the separate and independent citizen. Oral cultures act and react simultaneously, whereas the capacity to act without reacting, without involvement, is the special gift of detached, literate man. Another basic characteristic distinguishing tribal man from his literate successors is that he lived in a world of acoustic space, which gave him a radically different concept of time space relationships. Holy crap. That's just one paragraph. You know what I mean? I love it. I love that stuff. All right. So, just in the interest of time here, in the 70s, he suffered a series of health setbacks, including a stroke that impaired his ability
Hmm.
to speak. Despite these challenges, he continued to write and lecture, maintaining his status as a sought-after thinker. At one point, he had brain surgery. He had to have he had some sort of a cancer or something like in his brain, so he had to have that removed.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, and then
For a person who thinks
oh, I
it's
know,
like
I know. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it comes for us all.
mm.
Let's see here. Uh, in 1976, McLuhan also made his film debut. Woody Allen called and asked if he would agree to play himself in a cameo in Annie Hall. After years of teaching and lecturing and explaining the principle of the put on, McLuhan now had a chance to offer his subtlest lesson ever in how the medium could be the message. He accepted with professional aplomb and boyish glee. The scene was set for an early morning shoot in Manhattan. Corrine was astonished as they drove up to see so many New Yorkers queuing in front of a movie theater before breakfast. These were, in fact, the extras assembled for Allen's whimsical Deus Ex Machina scene featuring McLuhan berating a Columbia University professor of communications who was spouting rubbish about McLuhan's teachings. When Allen handed the script to McLuhan, he promptly scribbled a few changes to his lines. Allen agreed to what seemed like minor revisions, but they brought unexpected results, cracking up the extras and ruining the first take. Whether it was Allen's perfectionism or, as McLuhan later suspected, his resentment that McLuhan had stolen the show, he made him redo the brief scene 15 times. It exhausted McLuhan and brought him that much closer to another serious illness. He and
Oh
Crean
no.
left the filming location and went to Stephanie's apartment, where they watched the destructive force of a hurricane making its way up the East River. The film commitment was not over. A telephone call came announcing that the rushes had been screened and all were without sound. McLuhan would have to stay over. Abby, that's for you. McLuhan would have to stay over, go to a studio, and record fresh dialogue. In shooting the scene, he had ad libbed one of his long standing favorite comebacks to hecklers. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong. But even with the re recording of the soundtrack, the final print of the film portrays him delivering this as a statement. Without the force of a question, the authority McLuhan is supposed to represent is undermined. But he was too tired to argue the point, perhaps too tired to remember what the point was. When he had had enough time to recuperate, McLuhan wrote appreciatively to Allen about the experience. Allen responded praising McLuhan for his performance and saying, "It was a real treat working with you." McLuhan received a glowing comment about his performance from when a rough cut of the film was screened, fan mail, and requests for autographs when it was released. He knew nothing about the movie apart from his scene, not even the title, until he and Corrine tramped off to the theater to see it with a group of nine Witchwood Park neighbors. He described the event as a fun evening, but a poor show.
Oh.
Greatest romantic comedy ever made. Annie Hall. Define the
A
genre.
fun
Best,
evening, but a poor show.
the best. I
Marshall
love
McLuhan.
Annie Hall. Annie Hall makes me cry.
Yeah.
My mother looked like my mother in her prime looked like Annie Hall. Like
Right.
what's the actress's name? What's her name? Um,
Oh,
oh, we got to look it up.
we gotta look it up.
Ridiculous. It's such a good movie. Um, why can't I remember her name? Because we've been going for 4 hours. Diane Keaton.
Yeah.
Diane
Ah,
Keaton.
yeah.
Of course. Diane Keaton. Okay. Hey, Art of Darkness is back. This is season 5, the season of the witch. This is the first episode of many more to come. 2025. We love you. We love our listeners. We especially appreciate the people who support us. You know where to find us for the After Dark, artofdarkpod.com, patreon.com/artofdarkpod. If you went overboard, you want to come back, we're not going to judge you. We're going to judge you a little bit. We're gonna, but we won't shame you publicly. We won't. That's just not. It's not who we are. We're your friendly neighborhood podcasters. I think Abby's going to be fine. I mean, I understand if
Just
you want to
fine.
wait. Yeah, just fine. I understand if you want to wait to see how she does with Coco Chanel, go and
Hmm.
find Brad Kelly and go and support whatever he does next because I'll be the first person to subscribe to whatever he does because that guy, he's family and like seriously, and I can't wait to see what he does. I know he's got something going on with the tarot. Who knows what Brad Kelly's going to do, but it's going to be
There is
wonderful.
room in our hearts for two podcasts.
Absolutely, there is. Yeah. Listen, even podcasters need to form parasocial relationships with people, with
Yes.
strangers on the internet. Okay. It's almost like the medium is the message.
Almost.
Almost. Almost. Marshall McLuhan passed away on the 31st of December in the year 1980, leaving behind a body of work that continues to inspire us. His legacy is evident in fields ranging from media studies to cultural criticism, the way we think about media, McLuhan-esque. His insights into the interplay between technology and human perception laid the groundwork for understanding the world we live in now, the digital age. Scholars, technologists, and artists all turn to McLuhan to help us navigate the complexities of our media saturated world. Eric McLuhan, his eldest son, became a media scholar in his own right. Wrote a book called Laws of Media. You can go and hear him. Eric McLuhan, he speaks. I've heard him on podcasts in the past. They published a book called Laws of Media, 1988. It was posthumously published, and one of the key themes in this book is the tetrad. So it's like 4 effects, 4 questions to analyze any medium. What does it enhance? What does it make obsolete? What does it retrieve from the past? What does it reverse into when pushed to the extremes? When you're thinking about media, very interesting.
Hmm.
We could go on. Here's a quote on art and media awareness. Art is anything you can get away with. It serves as the distant early warning system for culture, allowing us to recognize changes before they are fully realized. That is a pretty good uh, assessment, um, I think, of what art is.
Hmm.
Corrine McLuhan, the Southern Belle, born Corrine Lewis uh, in April of 1912. She passed away in April of 2008, not
Hmm.
that long ago, in Toronto, just a week shy of her 96th birthday. And following his death in 1980, the center that he founded continued to operate, though without him, its prominence waned naturally.
Hmm.
In 1994, it became part of the University of Toronto's Faculty of Information, renamed the McLuhan Program in Culture and Technology. It later evolved into the McLuhan Center for Culture and Technology, which upheld his interdisciplinary approach to media studies until its closure in 2023. And that is the life and work of Marshall McLuhan.
What a life.
Ah, what a life. Abby, what do you think? What do you think Marshall McLuhan would be doing today if he was
Well,
still around?
as you said earlier, killing it on Twitter, but also maybe he would have a podcast. Um, maybe he would have a podcast. What else might he be doing? I'm not sure. I think advertising agencies would probably be trying to hire him to break through the extreme uh, mass amount of media that we have to get through to people more directly and concisely. I don't know. Maybe maybe well, I wonder if in his time if any political parties also tried to
Oh yeah.
hire him.
Ooh, yeah, I don't know the specific details, but somebody on Twitter just recently, he knew the prime minister, he knew Trudeau's father, and he was as like royal as royalty in Canada. I mean,
Right.
like top dozen Canadian thinkers of his generation. Um,
Mm.
and it's just think it's so interesting that this guy kind of like from the middle of nowhere, kinda edge of the world, this like second country, this country that's almost like a liminal space itself, like Canada,
Yeah.
what are we doing? Was able to see clearly the effects of this thing that we're all saturated in and
I
had
mean,
enough of an intellect to zoom out.
I guess it would depend on what his motivations were towards money,
Mm,
because having that amount of knowledge and thought and prophecy type thinking towards media could make you a lot of money if you were a Rupert Murdoch or in charge of
absolutely.
a PR
Or just
agency
like
or
what do you think his consulting rate would be like, oh, I'm
oh,
gonna go spend a
ridiculous.
month in Silicon Valley
Mm,
talking to these guys about they literally have they call themselves futurists now.
right.
Right. And this was a guy who was that before that was a thing and codified it and turned it into an entire new field of academic practice.
Yeah. So yeah, it would highly depend on how money focused he was, but maybe he wasn't.
Well, I think he was comfortable. I don't get the impression
Mm,
that he was ever, uh, once he became established, he was never wanting. I mean, but he did not come
right.
from money. So he's a wild success, just like our podcast, just like Art of Darkness. Season 5 is going to be an absolute banger. So Abby is gonna come back for After Dark. We're gonna talk about Chesterton. We're going to Pound Town. We're gonna talk about the future of sex.
I'm excited.
Come back for more tete-a-tete,
More tete-a-tete right here.
the hottest medium.